Welcome everybody to this month's Money Gym Masterclass. This month we're going to go a little bit high tech and we're exploring the world of Bitcoin, Forex, NFTs and various other phrases which you've probably heard out and about there in the news and elsewhere, but it's okay if you don't necessarily understand what they are, because that's what we're going to be covering today. I'm afraid if you did join this session in order to get some tips or some ideas on how to get rich quick or make your fortune, you might have come to the right place, and we can't promise we'll be able to help with that one, if only, right? In today's session, though, we will be talking about an important topic, which is risk, because risk and reward do go hand in hand, and we'll be exploring that too. We'll also be giving a non-technical person's overview of what the heck all these different things are all about, and some of the things that you really ought to bear in mind and think about before you even think about getting involved in investing your money or doing anything else with these types of newer types of financial instruments. And so then, as usual, there'll be time for questions and answers at the end. So looking forward to some of those. I think before I go ahead and introduce our speakers today, I think just one thing to make especially clear this week. The purpose of this session is to give you kind of general information and advice and explain how some of these things work and give a bit of an introduction to those things. But as always, and I can't stress this enough, if you are unsure about what to do with your money, or what kind of particular financial strategies are right for you, or are looking for specific advice, you should always go and speak to a suitably qualified independent person before deciding what's best for you. So having provided that health warning, very happy to introduce myself. So for those of you that have attended previous week's sessions, I'm Ben West. I run business development here at London Mutual, where I work to develop London Mutual's products and services and help to promote them in the wider world. And this month sees the return of the brilliant Monica Rock, our membership experience manager. Monica is responsible for looking after our members and making sure our products and services are easy to understand and use. Other thing to say is that neither of us are technical experts on this topic, but what we do understand is money and our members, and we're passionate about helping our members to make the most of that money. So in terms of what we may be able to answer questions on or not answer questions on in the Q&A, I hope that gives you a bit of a background for where we're coming from on this particular topic. So in terms of topics we'll cover today, the next big thing, all these new technologies and things that we're seeing out there, are they the next big thing, or is the whole thing a big bubble, or is it all a big scam? We'll be spending a bit of time looking at that. We'll go into a little bit of detail about how cryptocurrencies, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, Forex trading, how all of those things work, and not going into too much detail, but giving you a bit of an overview of what you need to know about each of those things and what it is that people are talking about there. I think we'll spend a fair bit of time towards the end just understanding, talking a little bit about kind of risk and whether risk is a good thing or a bad thing, or how you can understand that risk and manage that risk and use it to decide when making financial decisions for yourself. And then, as ever, we'll allow plenty of time towards the end for some questions and some comments from you all about what we've talked about today. So without further ado, Monica, as I say, we're non-technical persons, but what pops into your head when I say crypto?
So how can I say this? This currency is 100% virtual or digital. However, if you want to buy some of those currencies, you are investing your real money. So
you convert it from regular real money. So for most of us, pounds, you convert your pounds into a type of virtual currency.
Yes, this is correct.
Okay. Yep. And roughly speaking, I mean, have you dabbled in this? Have you had a go?
To be honest, because you can see it kind of everywhere on the news, I've tried to look around it. It's basically, for me, I'm not really a risky person to invest a bunch of my money into those kind of things. But I assume if some people really know what they are doing, it's a really good thing to just kind of look at. Not particularly. I didn't try. I was keen on this, but I just say no.
So I think the word you mentioned there is obviously risk, and I think we'll come on to talking a little bit about what that risk looks like, how to measure it, and I think it's fair to say that in this whole conversation around particularly cryptocurrency, but then also some of these other kind of newer technologies, it tends to be quite black and white, the view on it. It's either it's the best thing since sliced bread and we're all going to become billionaires overnight, and why don't you get involved? or it's all doom and gloom and you know and you're going to wipe out all of your savings. You know, in both cases those things can be true. But what we're going to try and do today is try and provide a kind of really objective view that perhaps, you know, makes it a little bit less black and white. You know, we're not going to argue for it or against it. We're going to give you the information, but then we're also going to make you aware of some of those risks and some of the things, some of the questions you should ask and things that you should bear in mind before you make a decision that you want to find out a little bit more or get involved in these types of things. So as I say, the next big thing, have you seen any of these adverts out and about, Monica?
I've seen actually the one on the bus. As I said, like there is like lots of things going on since 2009 when the first currency was introduced. So because it's becoming very popular, obviously in the current situation where we live, your money are not really better off in putting in the savings account, which you don't really kind of have any interest on it. So lots of people are looking for the easy and quick way to invest money and get as much profit as possible. As we said, it could be possible, it could be not. As you can see, money, this kind of currency money is advertised everywhere just to attract your attention.
Yeah, there's some really eye-grabbing things here. You know, money's evolving; it's time to adapt. And I think, you know, this newspaper article that we've got here, you know, these things called NFTs, and we'll explain what those are in a minute. But you know, things being sold for 69 million, and people being turned into millionaires overnight. You know, you see lots of examples of sort of you know, students sitting there in, you know, in their bedrooms in their pajamas, and they've become millionaires by doing all of this stuff. And you know, it's all very exciting. And it's, you know, if you know, in times like these when things are very difficult for people, and you know, you don't always make a lot of money from just leaving your money in the bank. It's obviously, you can understand the temptation why people sort of perhaps think about giving it a go. Obviously there's the sort of the other end of the other side of the story, which is, you know, like all types of investments, you know, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, all these things can go up as well as down. And I think, you know, there's you know, over on my left there, that's from just the newspaper on Sunday. So showing a particular cryptocurrency, Luna, where if you'd put in £100 back into it a year ago, back in April, you would have quadrupled your money. But then if you'd left it a few weeks later, it would now basically be worthless. And so, you know, I think there's a good example there of how these things can really go up and down really, really quickly. And I think, you know, the drop in the price of Bitcoin in particular, which we'll talk about a little bit more. You know, it spawned a whole set of kind of social media memes around people losing their money through crypto, and horror stories. And so, you know, there's two sides of every story, isn't there? There's you know, it's the best thing since sliced bread, we're all going to be millionaires next week. And then there's also, well, you're definitely going to lose your money. So you know, is it the next big thing or not? What's your thoughts, Monica?
I feel like if you know kind of what you're doing, you can be right with it. But in the end of the day, to be honest, if I was about to invest like £100 today, I cannot really see, you know, you cannot predict the future. You cannot really predict if it goes up and down. Obviously, for me, it's like a risk. It's like gambling. You put £100 on the gambling, you may win or not. For me, it's exactly the same thing, because I cannot really address it to any measurement, like political situation, the situation in the other country. So there is no like kind of any balance or any line to adapt this kind of change. So for example, on this picture, between April and July, something has happened. Technically, to be honest, I don't know what really happened there, but like this currency dropped from like 300, just above 300 to like zero. But what has happened, no one really knows. So this is the situation. Today you could be millionaire, tomorrow you could be bankrupt.
Well, yeah, and we'll go into a little bit more detail about, you know, how those things work. But I do think that before we sort of keep on talking about the kind of the risks and the pros and the cons of these types of investments, we're obviously throwing around lots of new words, which I'm aware that not all of our viewers will be completely may not be kind of familiar with them. So let's let's sort of, let's step back a little bit and talk about a little bit about what's going on. So I think, the overall big picture of what's going on here is that, these investing in all these sorts of digital assets is really kind of, it's become a lot more popular, a lot more mainstream over the past few years. I think that's due to a range of different factors. So there was the lockdown where, lots of people found that they had lots of time on their hands, and in some cases they had spare money. So they thought, why not have a go? There are lots of new apps and websites and tools that have made it really easy to kind of to be a casual investor and to invest, any spare money, even relatively small amounts of money online. But I think, the other thing which I think is important to be clear here is that, there are lots of really kind of complicated financial products that, previously it was, it's professional investors, it was big banks that were getting involved in this stuff and really kind of doing this stuff for a living. And suddenly, you've got people who perhaps don't have the same level of experience or knowledge that are kind of getting involved and chucking their money in without really fully understanding what's going on here. And I think, there's a quote over on the right of my screen from the Financial Conduct Authority, who they oversee kind of the whole of the financial system in the UK, including London Mutual. So they regulate London Mutual. But, in one of their recent reports, they've said, a younger, more diverse group of consumers are getting involved in higher risk investments. And they've sort of closed that report by saying buying shares in volatile markets is risky and you may lose money. So I think, there's actually a lot of concern out there from the kind of the experts, from the guys that are in charge of keeping the economy stable, that there are a lot of people kind of getting involved in these things without really being completely sure about what they're taking on. And there's a risk that, a lot of people lose a lot of money if they're not careful. So it's worth bearing that in mind. So we talked a little bit about Bitcoin specifically. Monica, did you want to sort of give us the kind of the non-technical intro on what exactly this Bitcoin thing is?
Yeah, this is the one which one was the very first one on the market. It has been designed in 2009. It was the currency which was completely 100% virtual. So basically, as I said earlier on, you buy the Bitcoin using your real money, and it goes into your virtual wallet. Then your virtual wallet is represented by the tokens. So, for example, one token bought for example, for £1 in a few years' time could be worth £100 or could be worth £0. So technically, if you invested £100 on 1st of July 2009, you could have much more a year later, or you could have much less. So this particular currency represented by the tokens, not by actual real money you are investing. Then it's not really controlled by any institution or the government. It's simply the worth of your token simply depends on supply and demand. Usually people go into tendency that when the worth of this Bitcoin is going down, sometimes people are panicking and obviously they're trying to sell as much as possible. But this is like the opportunity as well for the other people, because they think, oh, okay, it goes down, I'll buy more, because there will be a stage when we will go up again. It may go up or it may go down even more. So it's a bit like jingling situation. Like, do I do this or shall I wait? Shall I wait and keep my money, or shall I sell it all?
So there's an underlying technology here, which, I'm not going to bore you with, because if you're interested in it, there are plenty of better articles and better information than us. But, there's an underlying technology here called blockchain. And it basically means that, a little bit like cash, you can use it to buy and sell things without there sort of, being a kind of a central authority that oversees what's going on with that. And I think that's one of the things which has kind of made it popular and kind of made it new and interesting. I think, we talked a lot about Bitcoin, but it's also worth pointing out that sort of cryptocurrencies is kind of the overall term for a whole range of different types of cryptocurrencies. So there's Bitcoin, there's one called Ethereum, Tether, Terra. These are just a few of the kind of the more popular ones. But I think, it's all very exciting, and and you hear that new cryptocurrencies being launched all the time. I think the thing that I really wanted to make kind of clear here is that actually, if you have the know-how, anyone can launch a cryptocurrency. So a computer nerd, a kid sitting in their bedroom can launch a new cryptocurrency tomorrow. doesn't mean it's worth anything. For those of you that sort of know your know the kind of the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, where his mum sent him down to the shops to buy some food sent him down to the shops with some money. He met a giant on the way and he traded it for some magic beans. It could be that actually, with some of these cryptocurrencies, if you're handing over perfectly good cash, perfectly good UK pounds, and buying something which turns out to be worthless. So, as I say, some of them are more established than others, but it's worth bearing in mind that just because it's a cryptocurrency doesn't mean it's worth anything. You might as well be handing your money over for magic beans in some cases, or bits of paper, bits of plastic. It's only worth what other people believe that it's worth. So it's worth remembering that with the whole cryptocurrency thing. In terms of kind of how people use them, so a lot of people have kind of got involved in buying cryptocurrency in order to do an investment. So the idea is that if you buy some Bitcoin, so it might be that if I've got £10 and I can buy £10 worth of Bitcoins with them, and the hope is that in a year's time the value of those Bitcoin will have increased and I'll be able to sell them on for £20 and make a profit. Obviously, it can go the other way, as we'll talk about and go in a bit more detail. But that's one of the main reasons why people buy Bitcoin. You can also, not in many cases. So good luck going down to Tesco and trying to pay in Bitcoin. But there are a few examples of where, particularly kind of online companies, online sellers. So travel company Expedia. Some of them are starting to accept cryptocurrency as a form of payment, but that's not really very mainstream yet. And there are lots of companies, just like when you go to the airport or on holiday, there are lots of people that are offering to turn your pounds into other currencies. There are lots of places online where you can convert your Bitcoins into pounds and vice versa. So that's the sort of, to give you a flavor of how people kind of use them in practice. We're going to go and sort of talk a little bit, we'll talk a bit more detail about the kind of the pros and cons and some of the risk involved in a second. But I also wanted to sort of to talk before we move on, Monica, about these NFTs, these non-fungible tokens. I've got a picture of a cat in a bit of toast and a Pokemon card up on screen. What's going on with this? Because this just seems weird.
Yeah, well, so those kind of type of cryptocurrency is like unique piece of art where people feel like it may get some worth in the future. So, for example, someone invents it, like let's say Mona Lisa case. It was painted and it was worth nothing back at the time, but now it's worth like millions. So people do believe that this kind of image or physical item, real estate, music will be really profitable in the future when you sell. So they invest money in those kind of images, hoping that they can sell it in the future for some good chunk of money. So for example, this card, Flying in the Sky, was watched over 185 million times on YouTube. And it was sold for $500,000. Good money for just this kind of picture, but obviously not every picture will be sold for this kind of money. So sometimes it's just about like as well media attention, I would say, because if you don't have really media attention around those things, no one would really pay those money for this kind of item, I would say.
So it's a bit like a sort of certificate of ownership, isn't it? It's sort of, when you get like a collectible item, you get a little card saying, this item is completely unique, you own it, this belongs to you. And, if I own that particular thing, nobody else in the world owns it, so it's completely unique. And that's where the value comes from it. But of course, I could, this pen here, Monica, I'm prepared to sell you this pen along with a bit of paper saying that there is no other pen in the world like it. I'll do that as a non-fungible token. Are you going to buy it off me?
I've got enough pens. Thank you so much.
and so again, it's back to that point that you might be the only person in the world to own that particular image of Homer Simpson on a playing card as with Pepe the Frog or whatever it is. I think calling it personal taste here, but calling it art's probably a bit of a stretch, I would say. But you may be the only person to own that thing. Doesn't mean that it's worth anything. And so there's been a lot of hype in the news about this one. I think it's probably most of the people on this call, including myself and Monica here, we're unlikely to get in the business of buying non-fungible tokens anytime soon. I think it's probably a bit further off than things like cryptocurrencies. But I think it's important to understand what they're all about. Sorry, Monica, you were going to say,
Oh,
yeah.
no, yeah, I was just thinking about like this kind of again Mona Lisa case. Obviously, like at the time, it wasn't really worth nothing. But like, you know, when you think about those kind of images, as I said, you may feel that it may be the price will go up in the future, but it has to be really. So there has to be another person who is willing to buy and offer you better money, because like, let's say if you spend millions or thousands to buy some image, you would need to kind of make sure as well that potentially there could be someone to get it to buy it out from you for more money what you've invested originally. So
Monica, how much are you paying for the cat and a bit of toast?
for this car, I'll pay no more than £5, I would say.
So £5 is what it's worth to you. Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of, you know, what are these things actually worth? That's the thing that people, or the question that everyone's asking. And you know, I like to tell the Beanie Baby story, because I guess maybe I'm of a certain age, and I remember Beanie Babies, grew up with Beanie Babies, and this was what, maybe 20 years ago. Everybody was going crazy for these Beanie Babies, these sort of stuffed animals, and there was stuff all in the news about how, you know, this particular Beanie Baby, you know, sold for millions of pounds, and you should try and find this particular Beanie Baby because that's going to be worth a lot of money in times. And people would literally spend loads of money collecting up and buying all these little furry toys, and then in many cases they'd just put them away, because obviously they were worth more if you didn't play with them or didn't use them. You know, you don't want to give it to your kid. And so where we're up to 20 years on is that, you know, I know that members of my family, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, have got half a dozen of these Beanie Babies like sat at the back of their wardrobe, or, you know, up in their attic or whatever. And what are they worth? I mean, in most cases they're worth less than what we originally paid for them. And the reason I tell that story is that I think, you know, there's no guarantee with any of these things that you're not just buying the next Beanie Baby. You know, maybe these things are just virtual Beanie Babies. And I think, you know, there's a quote which I picked out and which I put up on screen here, which is, you know, I think it's really important to remember, which is, you know, once everybody stops collectively agreeing that something is worth something, it's suddenly not worth anything at all. And so, you know, we all got together, and we're, you know, across the, you know, because the population went crazy, everybody, you know, because we all went crazy, we as a country decided that, you know, suddenly Beanie Babies were very valuable and we should all collect them. Once people stop believing that Beanie Babies are value, it's not worth hardly anything at all. And I think, you know, that's whether it's cryptocurrencies, whether it's NFTs, it's only ever worth what people get together and say it was, and it can be worthless very quickly. So I think we'll come on to talking a little bit more about risk, but I think that's a really important principle to keep in mind. So one last sort of type of financial product that I wanted to just explore with you, Monica, before we kind of try and wrap things up and bring it all together and go to the Q&A. This business of Forex, and when I saw kind of Forex adverts on the tube, I must admit, I was like, what's that all about? But so Forex is what? It's foreign currency exchange. It's changing one type of money into another, isn't it?
Yes, this is what I'm actually using, but only for the case that when I go to my home country in Poland, sometimes I actually follow the price of the Polish zloty in the news, so I know more or less when it's going like up and down. So when I see there is like really good price, I exchange some money, because I know that in the future when I go to Poland, I can always spend it. So the all value of this money are not going to be totally lost. So the only thing what can happen if, like, for example, the exchange rate is going up and down, you can only lose money on the balance between those two. But it never will be the case unless the country go bankrupt, which I hope is not going to happen, that the value of my money invested will be completely zero. So yeah, you can actually invest in the currency where, for example, you are going quite often on holidays too, like euro or dollars maybe, because those are a bit better to predict. But obviously, lots of these things, it depends on the economical situation in the certain country.
So, Monica, you've dabbled a little bit in foreign currency trading. I hadn't expected that one, but I think,
to be honest, it's not like I've earned any money. To be honest, I just invested the money at the time where I knew the currency level is good. But in the end of the day, I've never got back to US, and just basically I'm using this money whenever I'm just buying from US websites, to be honest. But yeah, it was just for this purpose, to be honest.
So I think, unlike Bitcoin and NFTs and some of that kind of stuff, which is a bit newer, I think, probably, any of us on this call who have been abroad have done a bit of foreign currency exchange. If you've ever traveled abroad, that's all we're talking about here. Is we're talking about converting your pounds into other currencies and then back again. I think what makes Forex, and this whole Forex thing a bit different is the fact that actually what people are doing now, which perhaps they didn't do in the past, is they're doing it on a really large scale. So whereas it might be a few £100 to cover your holiday you're converting, you've got cases where people are starting to bet on the prices of different currencies going up and down and staking some really serious money on it. Now, obviously, there's companies and banks have done that for years, for decades, since the start of international trade. Companies have been doing that. But what's kind of different is that for the first time, apps like Revolut and apps like that are making it easy to do that yourself. Now, I think the thing to be aware of there is that just like all of these other, types of investments we talked about, they can go up and down really rapidly. So, even though it's unlikely that, the value of the dollar is ever going to go down, if you've got a lot of money tied up in that, you could still lose a lot of money. So, it's something where actually, the international money markets, there are people that make a lot of money doing this for a living. So, unless you're an expert, it's a good idea to should we say to be very careful about what you're going on there, because the chances are that there will always be people that are kind of one step ahead of you on that. I think the other thing to point out on this one is that there are a lot of scams in this area. Almost every week, I'll get a spam email from somebody saying that they've got a million US dollars in a country, and can I help them convert it into pounds? Or if you're ever approached with those sorts of emails, there's a very good chance, it's almost certain that it's going to be a scam or a fraud. And I think there's both avoiding getting scammed yourself. There's a good chance that probably these people are just going to take your money off of you. But then I think, the other thing to be aware of is that particularly when it comes to transferring money between countries and things like that, a lot of that kind of stuff is kind of caught up in international organized crime. There's money laundering, there's drug trafficking, there's people trafficking, there's all kinds of really unpleasant types of crime which can be linked to exchanging money. So if you are ever kind of approached by someone offering to buy or sell currency or asking for your help in doing that, be really, really, really careful, because actually you might be biting off more than you can chew and getting involved in things that you really don't want to be getting involved in. So, enough of the serious chat on that. But I think it's good for people to understand what Forex is. As I say, whenever you're traveling abroad, you're likely to do it, but really ask some questions before you try and think that you can kind of be one step ahead and make money on doing it. So we're trying to sort of bring together, we've obviously covered a lot of different topics, Monica, but in terms of bringing it all together, a few things to think about before people kind of think about investing in whether that's in currencies or anything else.
Yeah, I would pick up this one. Cryptocurrencies is NFTs are unregulated in UK, so you are not protected by anything. So, for example, if you buy something using your credit card, you can still go to your bank and just get your money back. When it comes to those kind of transfers using your cryptocurrencies, no one is really regulating it, so you basically lose your money.
So you're basically on your own with that. If someone sort of scams you, or the value of it goes through the floor and no one warned you about it, at the moment, those types of newer investments are completely unregulated in the UK. So there is no one that's watching out for your rights, and no one, it's very unlikely anyone's going to be able to help you if things get wrong there. So I think it's really important to be upfront about that. I think, my key point would probably be the first one, is that there is no such thing as a risk-free investment. So if someone approaches you, or you see things being advertised, in the UK, you're not allowed to advertise in this way. But if you do, people say, if you are encouraged to put your money into an investment and someone turns around and says it's absolutely risk-free, there's no risk, chances are, they aren't telling the truth, because actually there is no such thing as a risk-free investment. And generally speaking, the bigger the return. So if someone says, oh, I'm going to double your money overnight, the more return you're expecting, the more return that's involved, the more profit you're expecting to make. Generally, that goes in hand with more risk. So there's no reward without risk.
Sorry, Kadi, and I would just add, those person who is approaching you, it's not like this person is trying to make you rich. This person is trying to make rich themselves first, and then maybe making you rich or poor. It depends.
Exactly. So I think that's another point. We've already talked about your asset only being worth what someone's willing to pay for it, and I think you'll always see this at the bottom of adverts in the UK, because by law investment companies need to include it. But the message that you may get let back less than what you put in, and I think that's a really fundamental thing. So if it's money that's important to you, it's money that you really need, then really you should not be thinking about putting it anywhere near a high risk investment. So just to sort of start to wrap up and to summarize, questions to ask yourself before you think about whether you want to get involved in doing any of this stuff. And as I say, we're not here today to tell you what to do. It's always a personal decision, but there are some questions which is sensible to ask before you even think about doing it. Monica, did you want to take a couple of them?
Yeah, so for example, if I lost all the money I invested, would I be okay financially? So that one is like, basically, if you are willing to invest and if you're willing to buy some cryptocurrency, just basically just invest what you can actually afford to lose. I know sometimes people are reading all this news, oh, everyone is becoming millionaire and stuff, so they just kind of investing more than they really should. So just be very careful with it. If you're comfortable to invest that particular amount of money and you're not really scared to lose those, then this is fine. But yeah, just don't invest everything, because you may not have anything back.
Yeah, definitely don't put your rent on it. That's for sure.
Yeah, don't gamble your rent money or bills money.
Yeah, so that's how so many financial problems begin, and we do see cases of that. So yeah, one to be aware of. What else, Monica?
Yeah, talking about like kind of, because for me those kind of cryptocurrencies is a bit like kind of gambling. So another one is, do I have an addictive personality type? Everything starts from like a little bit. Everything is for people. Everything, like whatever you do in your life, but many people lose the control of what is a little bit and what is too much. So yeah, if you've got addictive personality, if you struggle with some kind of addiction in the past, that one could be one of those you can basically face when you started gambling in cryptocurrencies, especially when you start seeing you earning big chunk of money. So I feel like it's like kind of human nature. When you start like putting money into gambling or like kind of investing in cryptocurrencies, you invest £10 and suddenly you have 100. You're not going to stop. You're just going to put more, even 100 or even more, because you in your head is like, okay, because today I've got 100, tomorrow I will have 1,000, and 3 days later I will have 1,000,000. No, it could go the other way around.
I think that's an important point, and I think it links on to do I fully understand how this works and the risk involved? Because actually, one of the things I guess that makes things like cryptocurrencies perhaps so risky is that actually very few of us really genuinely understand how they work. We can Google it, we can read the facts, but in terms of understanding in detail, there's chances are there will always be other people that understand it better than you do. So one of the questions to ask yourself is, do I understand, am I confident I understand how this works? And because actually if you don't understand how it works, you're not going to be able to make a proper judgment about how risky it is and whether you're happy to accept that level of risk. So do your research, make sure that actually you're not just kind of being pulled in by the kind of the sales pitch. You actually understand the nuts and bolts of how it works in practice. And then I think the final one is we've talked a lot about the kind of the inherent risks that are based on these things, but obviously there are also cases where, as with lots of new things, there are cases where it's just a completely a scam. We've had a few cases of where that I want to warn you about, of where actually members have been asked to transfer money to someone's account because they say, I'm going to transfer money to someone's account, and they claim to be a kind of a cryptocurrency firm, or don't transfer me your money and I'll invest it in cryptocurrency. Those people, they take their money and then they're never heard of again. So if I have made the decision to go ahead and have a go at doing something like this, is the website or app that I'm using, is that a reputable, well-known, trusted one that lots of people have used and that's been out there for a long time? Or is the whole thing a scam? Is it just somebody, is it just a criminal or a fraudster that's trying to take my money off of me, and I'm not going to get anything out of it? And I think those are four questions which you should definitely have a think about and you know, and be sure about before, you know, if you do decide that something like this is what you're up, what, you know, that you want to have a go, or that this is for you, or that it fits what you want to do with your financial goals, then those are questions which you should be absolutely clear on before you even think about going anywhere near it. So the last word, Monica. So I'm afraid it does all feel a little bit doom and gloom, and I guess that sort of fits where sort of, you know, the economy and finances are at the moment. But we did just want to sort of, if that wasn't enough for you, close with a couple of sort of cautionary tales, stories about what can go wrong if in the worst case scenario. So Monica, tell us about what happened in El Salvador.
Yeah, so El Salvador was the first country which in September 2021 made cryptocurrency legal. So the government spent 105 million of taxpayers' money in Bitcoin, hoping that the value of this money will be much higher in the future. Unfortunately, in the space of 2 months, Bitcoin value went really down, and obviously the country lost trillions of dollars of taxpayers' money, and at the moment is like not really good situation. So, you know, like what government did in this country, I don't think was really wise. But yeah, unfortunately, this is what happened. This is the things when it can go wrong.
And I've got here the story of Stephen Thomas, the San Francisco developer, and I'm sure it probably makes me a bad person, but this made me chuckle a little bit. Just because it's so, you know, it's such a sort of nightmare scenario. But he'd put together, you know, he'd managed to build up a nice little nest egg of $220 million worth of Bitcoin, and he had that in a digital wallet. The problem was that he forgot the password to that wallet. And you know what we were saying a second ago about how if it all goes wrong, there's no one there to help you. Well, if he's lost the password to the wallet, he can't get access to his Bitcoin. So in effect, he's lost it all. So he's got 220 million in that Bitcoin wallet, but just like if you lose your wallet, I'm afraid that's 220 million that he no longer has. And
yeah, in his case, it's like imaginary money, basically the money, you know, in the loop, which he cannot get access to.
So not great to be him. But yeah, there you go. There's an example of it's a wild west out there, and to a degree, you're on your own with some of these newer technologies. So anyway, I hope that's not too much of a downer. I hope that, you know, everyone feels that that's a kind of a you know, an even-handed view of the kind of the pros and cons and things to bear in mind. Just to be clear, I think, you know, we don't have a view on this. You know, give it a go, don't give it a go. You know, I hope that we've kind of been very objective and fair about explaining what it is, helping you to understand it and what's involved. As I say, I would encourage you to do further research and to get some independent advice before you decide whether or not this is something for you. But hopefully that's a really useful and interesting introduction to the topic, at least. As I say again, myself and Monica are not technical experts on this, so please don't ask us questions about you know, the detail of how it works from a technical perspective. But as I say, please do type your questions in the chat box, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible.
I would pick up on that question. Are there limited number of Bitcoins? As far as I'm aware, you can just buy any you can afford, really. So I've never heard of this case, but like sometimes what happens that if you try to, let's say a situation happens, you need your money suddenly, or there is like a situation in the market that everyone is trying to get the money out. I know sometimes those kind of cryptocurrencies company may kind of block the account or basically charge you a fee because suddenly you try to take the money out. But I've never heard about the limit of the Bitcoins you can invest. So yeah.
No, and well, certain types of cryptocurrencies have different rules for how they work. So cryptocurrency can be mined. So by mining, I mean that it's like a complicated computer puzzle, and so you can set your computer to solve these very complicated computer puzzles and create more bitcoins. Gets very techy, very complicated, but in some cases, yes, there is a finite number of all of the bitcoins that there can be in the world. But it does, basically the rules and how it's set up varies a little bit from cryptocurrency to cryptocurrency. But in the case of Bitcoin, yes, there's a maximum number of bitcoins that can ever exist. So hopefully that's useful. I think Denise has got a really good question around, are there reputable sources of information? What are the most reputable sources of information, advice, and investing in this way? I think if as anybody that's Googled it has seen, there's huge amounts of information out there. There's a whole range of different websites. Some websites will be more trustworthy than others. And I think, as with doing any kind of online research, the usual rules apply in terms of, is it a news organization that you've heard of before? Have they been around for a long time? Is the information they're publishing accurate? The reason I'm not going to kind of suggest any of them or recommend any of them is because actually there's no because this whole kind of sector is completely unregulated. It's not like there's a kind of a central authority that can give you the correct answer. There is no correct answer or correct advice or most accurate advice on this, because actually there's nobody. I guess the thing that makes it a little bit strange is that there is no government regulating this. There's no government regulating it, or independent organization that's regulated it. There's nobody there that's watching out for consumers in this area. So by definition, there can't be a kind of an impartial source of advice. Everyone's got their own angle on this, and so what we've tried to do today is try to give you an understanding of the different sides of the story. But I guess the kind of the whole nature of Bitcoin is that actually no one has the last word on this, and so for that reason, I can't really help you beyond sort of use your own judgment and tread very carefully, I guess I would say. Question: can your wallet get stolen or hacked? Do you know the answer on this one, Monica?
To be honest, I don't. I believe like anything online, it can be hacked, I assume, but how would it work? I really don't know.
I think that all crypto kind of wallets are password protected. So just like any password, if someone gets hold of your password, I believe there have been cases of where basically if someone gets hold of your password, they can get access to your crypto. So the usual kind of considerations around security and antivirus and anti-fraud and phishing, all of those kind of basic internet security things apply, but they particularly apply here. So as I say, in all of these areas, make sure you do your research and understand what the risks are. Does London Mutual allow members to make transfer to cryptocurrencies? My bank, TSB, doesn't allow it as a form of protection. No, at the moment, and we don't offer that service, and we haven't got any plans for the foreseeable future. I think until, as I say, this is a very early days with cryptocurrency. Me personally, I'm of two minds, even of whether they're actually maybe, is this a flash in the pan? Is this a sort of craze like Beanie Babies that will be there and gone within the next 5 or 10 years, or is crypto here to stay? I don't know. Nobody knows. But I think until that becomes much clearer, and until there's until we start to see governments regulating it, still we start to see the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, who regulates us, it's unlikely that that we'll be providing any kind of crypto related services here at London Mutual. I think the other risk that comes with cryptocurrency is money laundering of cryptocurrency being used to to move around the proceeds of crime. And as a regulated financial institution, we have very strict rules around, combating money laundering, anti-money laundering, making sure it's clear of where the money came from. With crypto, it's incredibly hard to understand where the money came from. And so probably even just for anti-money laundering reasons alone, it's not something that we or other major regulated financial institutions are likely to be offering anytime soon. More questions. Yep, I think I think, my colleague Holly has provided a link in the chat here to the FCA's guide on investing. So as I say, there's no particular official guidance, as it were, on crypto or those sorts of new currencies. But if you are sort of interested in some of the themes we talked about in general, about things to think about before you put your money in different places, different types of investments, understanding risk, the guide from the FCA there that Holly has just shared in the chat is really useful. That's fca.org.uk/investment. No worries, Lola. Thank you for I'm glad you found today's session useful. Do I know of any genuine investment? As I say, certainly we're not setting ourselves up here today to tell anyone which investments are good, which investments are bad, because actually, in reality, the decision about what investment is good or bad depends on what you're looking to achieve, who you are, what your risk of appetite are. We're all looking to get slightly different things out of it, so which is why it's really important that it's a personal decision and you do your research. So no, I can't, and I'm sure Monica can't give any specific recommendations there. All we would say is ask those 4 questions and do your research.
Yeah, exactly. Do your research and basically check terms and conditions along this particular investments. Some accounts do offer like locked amount of money for, like, let's say 2 ISAs or another kind of accounts. And basically, after 2 years, you just get interest on them. But with cryptocurrencies, there could be some genuine, but I really don't. You need to basically check the terms and conditions with every single investments you do.
And I think that's an important point. There is, I think, we are by no means saying in today's session that all cryptocurrency is a scam, or that there aren't ones out there that are that work and that have delivered returns to people, whatever. What we are saying is that it's a little bit like the Wild West, in that actually there's no one setting the rules or regulating it, and so nothing is guaranteed. And if something goes wrong, you are on your own. So unlike other types of investments which are regulated, or unlike putting your money in the bank, where all financial institutions that take deposits in the UK are regulated, whereas more traditional forms of investing and traditional financial services in the UK, those are all regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, which means that you, as a consumer, you as a depositor, you as an investor, you have rights, and you have rights, and you have the right to complain if things go wrong. You have the right to certain information. There are certain rules which we, like all financial institutions, have to follow. The thing that makes, the thing that actually it's important to be really clear about with things like cryptocurrency and NFTs is that at the moment, none of those don't come under those forms of regulation. So none of those kind of rules or protections exist, and you are very much on your own there. And so that's not a scare story, but that's the reality there. And I think that's a really good comment there from Denise, is that if there is interest from our regular attendees in a session on investing more generally, I think that's definitely something which we can schedule and look at for the next few months, where we can talk about some of the kind of putting perhaps some of the kind of some of these newer technologies to one side. We can perhaps go back and look at ISAs and stocks and shares and some of those other kind of types of investments which perhaps are a little bit more widely understood and
regulated as well. So yeah.
Yep, we can definitely feed that in when we're planning future sessions. But if that's everything, if we haven't had the chance to cover your question today, please do always feel free to email us at feedback@creditunion.co.uk. And if we can ever help with anything specific to do with your account or your membership with us, or you need help getting set up with online banking or anything else like that, you can use the same email address, and Monica or one of the rest of our team will get in contact with you within the next 24 hours. So thanks everyone for attending today's session. Hopefully you found it interesting. I know I did.